Welcome to Fortel's latest Lunch and Learn session. This time we're focused on the LGBT plus community on International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, otherwise known as IDAHOBIT. So I'm Sharon Slinger from Constructing Rainbows. I've been working with Fortel for a good few years now, maybe 4 or 5 years, helping them with their equality, diversity and inclusion strategy. And I've also chaired a few other lunch and learns that you can find on Fortel's YouTube site. We've got a great lineup of speakers today. I'm just going to go around and let everybody introduce themselves. So Samantha, do you want to start?
Okay, my name's Samantha West. I'm transgendered. I transitioned several years ago, about 8 years ago now, whilst working for Vinci. They're a construction company and facilities management company. Basically I was commercial director, and I basically, as commercial director, I used to be he for several years, now almost 19 years. And then in the last 8, I transitioned to Samantha and carried on in the workplace, held my job, and now I've just finished work completely and looking to do new things.
Super, thanks, Sam. Martin?
Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Lukes. I am previous chair for Transport for London, and it's me, the guy that put in the traffic lights that caused people to have so many complaints to TfL, but also brings a lot of tourism to London as well. I also put rainbows on buses and taxis and various bits and pieces. Left TfL in 2017 and set up my own, working in change communications. And yeah, I do a lot of public speaking on the subject of celebrating LGBT diversity. And I'm here to help encourage others to take that step to move forward as well. That's it.
Super, thanks, Martin. Ellis?
I'm Ellis. I'm a non-binary Year 12 student, and my pronouns are they, them.
Well done. We should have done pronouns as well. Didn't. Mine are on the screen though. She, her. Susan.
My name's Susan Leslie-Smith. I work for Fortel as a finance manager. I've been here for 14 years. And I've joined this discussion today to talk about the experiences of family members who are in the LGBTQT community.
Super, thanks. And Valletta?
Hi, I'm Valletta. I'm the HR and payroll manager for Fortel, and I'm also the social value lead.
Excellent. So we'll start off with the questions. So the 2024 theme for IDAHOBIT is No One Left Behind, Equality, Freedom and Justice for All. What does that personally mean for you? Samantha, do you want to start?
Oh, for me, it just means just stop hurting people. I'll keep it simple, Sharon. That's what it means.
Yeah. Martin?
Sorry, I just had my microphone on quickly. For me, it means understanding, very similar to Sam, understanding that we are different. We are all different, even within this own community, and supporting each other. It's very key that we do that.
Ellis?
For me, it just means acknowledging, listening and learning from everyone's perspective, especially those who have been left out in the past, and on a more personal level as a non-binary person, including non-binary and intersex people in topics when you talk about periods or abortions.
Yeah, really good points there, Ellis. Often areas that get forgotten. Susan?
For me, it's no matter what your race, your gender, your sexuality, no one as an individual should lose an opportunity to get the career they want in life.
Brilliant. And Valletta?
For me, it's recognizing the challenges that our LGBTQ plus employees and colleagues face, and also our potential employees and the wider society, to ensure that whenever I come across them or whatever I can do to make sure that they are treated fairly. And as Sue said, leaving no one behind. So it's make sure they have a voice and they feel safe whenever they come to work for Fortel.
Excellent. And that wider society piece, I think, leads us well into the first question for Samantha. So transphobic hate crime has increased massively over the last few years. Has this been your experience generally, and has this translated into the workplace?
Yes, unfortunately it has. I mean, some of the stats on this is approximate a few years back before COVID, we're talking about 408 hate crimes in the UK. By 2022, we got to a number of 4,732, which is crazy. And a lot of the drivers behind that are like negative press articles and things like that. So I went to an event where there's a count of negative press articles. There's 17,000, and that's generated by people in the press and people in positions of power, sort of giving this negativity towards transgender people, which is incredibly sad. But the thing is, they say these things at that level, and it translates to people like myself on an everyday level. And, you know, I consider myself one of the lucky ones. I'm sure people have it a lot worse than I do. But in the last 2 months alone, I've had an encounter on a train, transphobic encounter on the train, coming home from London, and 2 transphobic events in pubs where I've been out with my friends where I live. The train one was awful. You know, a guy literally was just picking on me and calling me out and in front of a packed train, and I had to move away from him, and I was in tears, and it was like really distressing. The other ones in the pub was bearing in mind that I have not taken being transgendered lightly. I have, you know, put my family at risk in terms of losing them potentially. I've gone through lots of surgeries. It's been a very difficult journey for me, and had to go through the work transition. For somebody to just say, "Are you a man?" in a ladies' toilet, it was just abhorrent to me, and it hurt. So, you know, so out there, it is on the increase, very sadly, and it needs to stop. In the workplace, though, it's better news, definitely. Now, in my workplace, I've had a really good journey. It's been wonderful, very positive, and I think when companies actually do an amount of work around this space of equality, diversity, and inclusion, it really does help, and it's very important, and it's really helped me. And I've just done a little bit of work for another company outside Vinci, because I was with Vinci a long time. So you'd think, oh, well, maybe they just know me and, you know, it's okay, I'll get away with it. But this other company I work for, I've had no trouble either. So my experience in the workplace is much better than in general life. Having said that, I do have had colleagues in Vinci that have had a difficult time, either with other Vinci staff, mainly about misgendering, unfortunately, and also, interestingly, with customers' staff. So if you're an FM contractor and you're working for a customer, I won't say any names, but very household names, and you're an engineer going in to fix an aircon unit, and you're called out and abused, it's just not good enough. And what's sad that I've seen is the backup from the company I work for not really helping out that individual and not really giving them the full support that they deserve. It becomes a bit of a lone battle. So there's some work to be done there in terms of that. So that's it really. I thought I'd give you a picture on this. and it's very concerning. When I did make the move back in 2017, when I came into the workplace, I thought I was moving into a safe space. I thought the world media was on my side. I thought people respected me and I was going to be okay. And I come to 22, 23, 24, and the world's changed. And it hurts.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of really good points there, like the importance of whatever's going on outside in society, that the workspace is that safe space to be. Because, you know, if you're dealing with all that outside of work, you want to come to work and you know, just feel secure in the people that are around you.
Yeah.
I think the other good point you made there is about clients, staff, and actually having your company back you up. You know, there's no point saying you're an LGBT inclusive organisation, but then when it comes down to cold hard cash and having a word with a client and worrying about missing out on money, that doesn't demonstrate your LGBT inclusiveness. So thanks for that, Sam. I know it's a really rough time at the moment, and thankfully most of the LGBT community are fully behind trans people. So we'll continue that fight. Ellis, so we hear that the younger generations are much more accepting. Has this been your experience at school with peers and teachers?
Yeah, fortunately for myself, I've had a pretty good time at school actually. All the teachers were really good when I asked if they could use my name and pronouns, and pretty much everyone in my year was fine about it as well. There are definitely people in my year that aren't that accepting, but they don't really voice it because they know that they're going to get some negative consequences from that. But unfortunately, I do know a lot of people my age and people younger than me that haven't had a great time in school, and I found a lot of people aren't accepting. So it's quite mixed.
And what do you think, like, what do you think schools can do to support, you know, non-binary trans people coming out at school more than what they have already?
They need clear consequences of what's going to happen if you do discriminate against someone, and they need to keep to their word as well, because sometimes schools will say, oh, we will call people out on it, and then they don't follow up on that.
Yeah, I think there's an education piece as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
And did your school actually, sorry, I'm asking you questions that aren't on the question list. But did your school help educate other people about your name change and pronouns, etc., or was that down to you to do?
That was pretty much just down to me. But in recent years, they did get a bunch of trans students together with myself, and we did make an educational video for the teachers about like different terminology and how to address trans people and how to talk to us. So we touched on the fact that to ask us if you can use the same name and pronouns when talking to our parents or other people in the school.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really interesting. Has that been released externally or is that done internally?
No, it's done internally. We weren't allowed to release it externally because of safeguarding for some of the students' video.
Yeah, I think it could be quite useful for elsewhere.
Yeah,
to see that as well. Thanks, Ellis. So Sue, some of your family members are part of the LGBT plus community. Did they face any challenges coming out?
I think that it was a mixed response, basically. My parents were very concerned when my sister first came out as being gay. And I think that was based very much on fear of the unknown, fear of how her life would be, because they had no experience to sort of work off. Whereas I think for the siblings, because we were all so much older than my sister at this point, and we'd all had very positive experiences within the LGBTQ plus community. So I wouldn't say it was a shock that she came out, because we had no real inkling. You know, we just didn't know. It wasn't a shock. I can't describe how we sort of knew, but didn't really know. Do you know what I mean? So we were able to give her more support than my parents were at the beginning. And it took my parents about 2 years to come round to the fact that, you know, but often it's always a phase. It's going through a phase. I'm just like, no, you know, she's not going through a phase. You know, this is her life. Obviously, once she started to sort of demonstrate that this was her life and she was very happy within that life, and that's when they came round to her being a lesbian. And obviously, he got married 7 years ago, and it was a very proud day for my dad, because he took her down the aisle, which obviously at some point we were a bit like, ooh, you know, would he ever get to that place of complete and utter acceptance, which he has done. In terms of, do I think it's any easier? I don't think so. I don't think it's any easier for any of the youngsters or any older people to sort of, like you say, Sam, you know, to make that decision and to sort of come out and to tell people. Again, I can only put that down to people not having the right sort of education or the right experience to be able to let everyone fit in as they should be able to, regardless of who they are or what pronouns they want to use or anything else, which is why education is so important.
Yeah, and I think it's key to note no one's born homophobic. Like, you know, they've learnt it from somewhere. Yeah. And actually, you know, we can make sure that people don't learn it by being good role models to others. I think it's interesting what you say about kind of how it considered that our life was going to be different, because one of my friends' kids came out and she said to me, I don't know why it's bothering me. I don't know why it's bothering me. And she was like, and we got to the bottom of it. Basically, she was like, oh, you know, I'd planned the big wedding, the kids, whatever. And I was like, well, they can still have the big wedding and they can still have the kids. Like, you know, we're not where we were, you know, 20, 30 years ago. We have moved on, well, in the UK, a lot in the last kind of couple of decades, or maybe more than that. I'm getting old. So yeah, I think that's really positive. Martin, you've been at the forefront of making positive change for the LGBT plus community. What do you think is working that we should do more of?
Well, it is interesting. So you know, we're talking how many years ago now? So that's 7 or 8 years ago. Actually, more than that. 2014, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there were no rainbow crossings in London. I think one in Brighton that was put down where I live now. That was quickly ripped up, and really starting to think about things that we could do in London first, because it's a tourist destination. It's one of the main tourist destinations, I would have thought. And I think more companies should be doing more permanently. So, just for example, I mean, the rainbow crossing was the first thing I did. It was put down for the day, but it was a movable crossing. It was actually a very special, if you like, carpet that we could move around to different venues, and we did. And it actually went to Jersey on a journey for their pride. Put it in Trafalgar Square to represent same-sex weddings. That was 10 years ago. And I think then I thought, you know, we could do something a bit better than that. TFL is London, really. You know, you can't go past any any landmark or cross a road or going to, that's not controlled somewhere by TfL. And I just went all out on sort of campaigning to do these things. For the first and most item I did was a rainbow bus, and just even thinking about putting a rainbow bus on a bus took a little while for people to get their heads around. But I thought, you know what, if we're going to do it, let's do it for LGBT History Month, and let's do it and make it, as permanent as possible, so it doesn't just look like pink washing, right? And funny, that bus, it drove its way, through the streets of London for 18 months in the end, because in the end it had to have its windows replaced and the £9,000 wrap had to come off. But I was so proud that TfL did that it wasn't just down for a month or a few days, which is what a lot of companies do. It was on that bus for 18 months. And then, I was approached by a taxi driver who said, I like that bus. And obviously, we got a lot of comments about that. Not all good, but I would say 99% good. Who wanted his taxi pimped up, and I thought, yeah, this sounds fun. So we found another sponsor to get it done, and within a few weeks, we had his taxi pimped up. And people don't think of taxi drivers as being gay. I mean, but there are gay taxi drivers, right? And it just doesn't seem like it. So then we had a taxi on with private prize on it. And I thought, well, I'm not going to stop there. Do you know what I'm going to do? Let's see if I've got something with deep pockets. And I engaged with Barclays and said, I knew a few got Barclays. And I thought they had deep pockets, right? And I said, why don't we do a train? Let's do a train as well. And my moons aligned, and what we did was we pimped up. Let's use that word again. A Docklands Light Railway train, which is superb, and it was on the route that went from Stratford to Canary Wharf. So it went past Barclays offices every day in this beautiful Barclays blue train with this lovely rainbow on it. Again, that was something we did for 10 months. So it didn't stop when Pride stopped. It carried on, and then so at one point in time we had 3 assets, for want of a better reason, to actually demonstrating that London was open for all, and that's what I wanted to do. And I think this is where I never really considered myself an activist, right? So activism seems like placards and stuff like that to me. I think this is activism, but it's activism in a kind of positive way, celebrating diversity. And then shortly before I left, and this I alluded to earlier on, I put the traffic lights down in Trafalgar Square. I worked with Siemens Traffic, right? I worked with all these male engineers, right? And I literally spent the whole thing was put in 6 weeks, which is amazing, right? But I spent a couple of days going around, people don't realize this, going around Trafalgar Square, selecting which lights I wanted, which lights I wanted to replace, and all of them had vistas, right? So I was fully inclusive. So what I did was I made sure that we represented heterosexual relationships as well as LGBT, and I also went in and fought for trans symbols. And no traffic lights, right, had ever been done anywhere which had trans symbols on. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to make this happen. And I fought with City Hall about just the holding hands design, but also having symbols. And I got it. So then what I also made sure is all the kind of LGBT symbols are all, when you take a picture, it's, you've got the portrait gallery in the background, or you've got Nelson in the background. And, the heterosexual ones didn't get such good vistas, but I 48 traffic lights, right? And I was so proud to do that. And it is the picture that people saw so much of, and it showed London was open to all. And then 6 weeks after putting that in, TfL wanted me to take them out. And I'm like, no. I said, we can't do that. And I said, well, they can't be up forever. And the weekend before they were considering taking them out, the Mail on Sunday, oh, I love the Mail on Sunday, was so great. On the 3rd page of Mail on Sunday, they had a 4-page spread of my traffic lights, right? And it said, what would Nelson say? A picture of Nelson's column. And it was a really negative press article about the traffic lights, right? And they had pictures of people, you know, looking confused at what to do when the light changed to green, right? But it was so funny. It was such a convoluted article. I just kept it, and then I sent it to the engineer that was said that was take lights out. I said, "Are you really going to take them out now?" And I can thank the Mail on Sunday for that, because TfL, once they realised that was the case, it would have looked like we were pandering to the right-wing press. And now I'm very proud to say that those traffic lights have a 25-year lease. So, you know, after I'm gone, those traffic lights will still be there. And that was a battle worth fighting, I think. And for me, I think that legacy of having permanent assets, so when people change, and you know, TfL now every year has these big campaigns, and this legacy I've left behind is really good. So, you know, companies shouldn't just turn up for pride, right? I think they should have ways of representing their staff, the colleagues, and the colleagues' families somewhere within their organisations. And I think that's very important. And I think I did that. I achieved that at TfL. And what I continue to do is talks like this, etc., to really get people on board, trying to make it more than just for a day at a time.
Brilliant, thanks, Martin. And yeah, I've got run over a few times, or nearly got run over a few times trying to take photos.
There is a really good one which has a 2-minute. I should tell you which one it is. And it is two females together, actually. There's a 2-minute cycle. So yeah, I even timed each one of the signals, so I knew which ones were the longest before I put it down. It was that level of detail I went to.
But I think your story really demonstrates as well that, like, how hard you have to battle for some of these things still. But actually it's worth it in the end if you can keep your energy levels up. But it still does feel like a battle for LGBT inclusion at the moment. Violetta, Fortel have been doing LGBT plus toolbox talks on sites. Why did you decide to do that? And do you think it's having a positive impact?
I would say from a Fortel perspective, we kind of understand that society on a whole is constantly evolving, basically. So fostering inclusivity is kind of an essential thing for businesses these days. So we're trying to kind of embrace diversity, creating an environment where everyone feel kind of valued and respected. And it's kind of important to ensure that everyone feels valued, because it enhances employee satisfaction. It's been proven numerous times, and it drives productivity and innovation. So it's good to include everyone and not just people from certain aspects of life, but just to be inclusive for everyone. It is also from a Fortel point of view that we actively embrace and celebrate all the diverse identities and perspectives and experience of our employees. And Fortel was looking at their stats and realized that in the construction industry, the LGBTQ plus is kind of one of the underrepresented groups. And I think the senior leaders were talking about it. And as we work with different supply chain, we were working with one of our clients, and we were explaining around how we can drive more individuals from the LGBTQ plus to kind of apply for jobs, and how can we make them feel safe in the workplace, and what can we do to support them. So that's where you, Sharon, came in. So you were recommended by one of our clients that Sharon does all these amazing things and all these amazing stuff, and would probably be able to support us in our journey. And that's where we started our Toolbox Talk. In terms of whether or not there's an impact, I can say yes, there are more allies on site now. So you have quite a few site workers who are allies of the LGBT plus, and with our Make It Stick campaign that was launched as well, they also wear the ally sticker on their hard hats. So that shows our colleagues who they can go to and who will listen to them, who will have a voice for them as well. So educating, it was more about educating our colleagues so they can treat their peers equally and probably kind of understand from their perspective what they face on a day-to-day. I would say it also give them the opportunity to kind of be more understanding of their colleagues as well. So I think, yes, from a point of view in educating our workers and the wider workforce, I think, yes, it does have an impact.
Yeah, and I think you should say award-winning Make It Stick campaign, shouldn't you?
Yes, I missed out the award-winning, definitely award-winning. They have won quite a few awards for the Make It Stick campaign, which is still going and going on strong as well. So, yes, it is good.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed doing the talks on site. We've had like, big burly site blokes going, oh, in 30 years, I've never had the opportunity to like talk about this stuff, or, I'm really proud of my gay daughter and what have you. And it just provides that space to have those conversations that, otherwise they're not having. So yeah, I've really enjoyed being a part of that one. When we're talking about kind of entry into the industry, Ellis, obviously you're starting to think about careers in the, well, not in our industry, but careers full stop. What's your impression of a career in construction for LGBT plus people? Do your peers see it as a safe and welcoming place for them?
Well, I see it as like a mostly white male dominated industry, so I didn't think it would be that accepting and that great, but I feel like it is getting better, especially because we should be protected under the 2010 Equality Act. So hopefully, if there was any discrimination, then something could be done about it. I asked my friends, and they kind of have the same opinion as me. But one of my friends like really looked into it and found out that a lot of people in construction aren't really homophobic. They just say things that can be interpreted that way because they just don't think that could affect someone. Personally, I'm not that interested into going into construction, so I haven't had much experience with it. So I can't say this is definitely what construction will be like, but this is how people my age see it.
And that's really interesting to hear, because actually the perceptions of the industry are what probably stops a lot of people coming into it. And if you are wanting to do sustainability, we do have a lot of sustainability roles within construction, but totally understand if it's not for you. But I think it's a really good point though, and it's something that we need to address as an industry, because you're right, people do say stuff like, oh, that's so gay, and they're not like meaning it's gay. They're just, that's what they use like in everyday life, and they bring it into the workplace. So I think you're right. I think it's changing, but there's pockets of good practice and bad practice. So Samantha, what more can we do to create that safe space for the younger generations to join, but also for current LGBT plus people within the industry that are still fearful of being themselves at work?
Well, the answer to that is lots. Basically, there are a whole host of activities and things that need to be done in any construction industry company. But it's no point doing them if they're not visible. So with the youngsters and the LGBT people looking in on an organisation or being part of an organisation, all of these initiatives need to be visible and actually put into action so that they can see the company walking the walk Now, so in terms of what can be done, well, I see it as like 5 pillars of diversity and inclusion, and they include company policy and guidelines, leadership, training, communication and interaction, and supply chain engagement. They're the 5 main areas. So with company policy, obviously, there needs to be a policy within the organisation about the organisation's approach to diversity and inclusion, set out and to give everybody a standard in the company, and then below that would be guidelines like employment and recruitment guidelines, transgender guidelines, guidelines on how to speak to, how to take care of people, you know, all of these things, but they don't want to be things that are just stuffed into the drawer. They need to be out there, being used and updated. Also at that point, taking stats is a very useful exercise. And my old organisation, we had an engagement survey, and most people, we had a response rate of about 85%. And it was really, really clear that when people tick the box, I prefer not to say when asked about their sexual orientation and also their gender, and preferred not to say, their level of engagement, i.e., I really like this business, I would recommend this business to others, I would I really enjoy and see a long future here. That level of engagement went right down. So it's really important for the whole business to actually be able to increase that engagement, and to do that, they need to allow people to be themselves, their authentic selves in the workplace. So that's guidelines. Leadership. When I first did a LGBT event in Vinci, it was their first ever, sadly, and that was in 2017. There was no leadership support with it. No leaders turned up. Nobody backed it. I was out on a limb, having to do it all. And 1 or 2 said they might come, and they didn't. Rolling on to 2023. At the start of the Pride event, the CEO actually stood up and talked personal stories about himself and how he would support the business, which is a much better place. I know it's only once in a year, but he did it. The only problem with that, of course, it's not continuous all through the year, and conference events and things like that. Diversity and inclusion got little airplay. Which needs to change. And then leadership also, role models, positive role models that people can look up to and say, right, that person's transgender, I can be that too, because that person's successful in the business. They seem to be getting on fine. I'll take courage from that. And that's really important too. So people in fairly senior positions actually being role models, and these role models also undertaking upward mentoring for the people at the very top. I mean, I have to say that my MD had no clue about how to deal with transgender people before I turned up and presented myself to him. So it's a steep learning curve for him. But if there's a willingness to learn, that's great, and they should be supported in that regard. I can't tell you how many speeches I've done in organisations where HR turned up, the allies have turned up, a few people in the community have turned up, but there's no management at all anywhere. They're all just too busy, and this is not important enough. So a bit of a lecture there, but you know, that's what I've seen. Training. I think there's no problem with mandatory training around diversity and inclusion, learning all aspects, right from pronouns to the Equality Act, who's protected, who's not. And just general learning about how to be kind and considerate in the workplace. That's pretty key. And I think a to have a mandatory training as well as some optional training. I think that's really important that everybody does it, and I really applaud the toolbox talks. Absolutely fantastic. Which brings me on to communication and interaction. So as I said earlier, it's no good doing all these things without communicating it, and obviously having LGBT events where like-minded people can join up and talk to one another about their issues of the day and everything. At that first one that I did in Vinci, we had a grad there. Lovely time in university. Stepped into the corporate environment, shut down, and really quite worried about how it was all going to be. I did another LGBT event in Manchester, which Sharon attended and did a speech, which was wonderful, Sharon. And what really struck me about that event was a member of staff brought her daughter along, and her daughter had just was in a relationship with another girl, and which is lovely. And the mum had brought these girls along to say, look, LGBT, everybody's talking about it in a corporate environment. It's going to be okay, girls. You're all right. You don't have to be afraid of it. So, you know, that gave me a lot of heart there. And then, you know, all these events like we're doing today on the special days, as well as continuing things throughout the year, is really important. And also on everybody's looks at websites and all the company communications. Does your website actually signpost anything around LGBT right now? When somebody looks in on it, somebody who's looking to take on a role, how do they see that you are inclusive straight away? You know, that's really key, and it'll help with recruitment and things like that. So that's great, but it also tells the person what you're about, at least when approaching the organisation, so they've got a feeling that, you know, perhaps I will be okay, and encourage them to apply. So that's very important. And then finally, supply chain engagement. We all have suppliers, and some of these suppliers are very small businesses. They haven't got the resources the larger companies have, and it's good to engage with supply chain to share best practices and talk about things, and bring them along. And they'll have people in their own organisations, albeit a few in number, but at least they can benefit from the learning in a well-funded organisation. I certainly learned a bit from TfL. And I have a little story about that, where I wanted to fly a flag outside our head office because I'd seen TfL do it. No doubt it was Martin, probably pulling up the flagpole, and I was turned down. I was very, very cross about that. It was really awful, but I think I'm not sure whether they're still doing it now. But you know, I do applaud TfL, and I have to say that at some events we have engaged with suppliers, and it's a good thing to do. I think also you need to test suppliers in the procurement process and with positive statements about diversity and inclusion, but following that up with some sort of checks and balances. Certainly at HS2, where I did a speech, and Vinci actually are doing the northern leg up in Birmingham. They have really great policies up there, and I remember at a RICS event again, which I wasn't allowed to attend to as Samantha by my business. I had to leave a bag of clothes, which was Samantha in concierge, but I was allowed to go, and I sat there as representing my company, sat in the wrong guise, listening to the CEO of HS2 going, if anybody doesn't walk the walk on HS2 about diversity and inclusion, they won't be on the tender list, period. So yeah, it was quite an interesting. Well, I felt a bit strange at that point. So yeah, loads of things to do. I think, and for the youngsters certainly, just having that visibility so that they get the confidence to actually step forward in the industry, because it is a great industry. It's a wonderful place to be, and things are getting a lot better. So thanks to all the D&I work that a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into up and down the country.
I think you're right there, Sam. I think we wouldn't still be in the industry if it wasn't a great industry. It just needs just a bit rough around the edges and needs a bit of sorting out in some places. I think your point about leadership is really key, because all the rest of the things you can do, we know what needs to be done, really. We just need the leaders to go, yes, we're going to do it, and here's the resources and time to do it, and then things will move on. But we do see a lack of that leadership sometimes in organisations. So Sue, you're an ally. How do you support the LGBT plus community?
I'm an ally in training, very much so. Obviously, since my sister came out, which was in 2000, as we know, the community itself has sort of expanded quite considerably. And I would not say I was an expert in any way, shape, or form on all the terminology, all the pronouns. So I know that as an ally, although I can help people by listening, learning, supporting them, I need to improve my own knowledge in order to be able to be the best as an ally I can. What I have found, just by the conversations that we've had since we've been doing trying to do this webinar, I've got a bit of a greater courage to actually speak to my family, because that's still quite difficult even for myself, because as Samantha has said, there's been some very negative press regarding some issues, and I've managed to sort of bring those issues up with them, and although I haven't always got a brilliant response, I have got them thinking about the way that they speak, and perhaps some of the terminology that they use. So I think as long as I can sort of carry on with that, and like I said, learn more myself, and try and take it outside of just an office space or whatever, and challenge my family and challenge my friends. Perhaps have views that I don't particularly find comfortable. So if I don't find them comfortable, the other person isn't going to be comfortable either, and that's what we need to challenge, is that people are using certain terminology, no, that's not, it's not right, it's not comfortable, and it's not comfortable for anybody. We need to change that view. Like, as sort of like saying, people will use words like alien again, it's not acceptable. Or, like you say, that's the rough around the edges, perhaps. And it's not just in the construction industry, that this does go on, through quite a lot of industries. Obviously, for us working within the industry, we want people to feel comfortable and included and not discriminated against, and safe.
I think that's a really good point. It shouldn't be left to the LGBT community to kind of correct people on their language or what they're doing or what they're saying. And actually, those small things that, like you're doing, those little corrections, it just makes people stop and think before they do it again. So it's really important that allies are going out there, and it's great that you're kind of learning stuff within the workplace and then going out and taking it up to a broader thing, because that broadens the impact that you're having. So that's really great to hear. Martin, you were recently in New Zealand speaking with engineering professionals. What can we learn from the Kiwis on LGBT plus inclusion?
I think when going to places like Auckland, you don't realise, or New Zealand, sorry, you don't realise how inclusive they actually are. I mean, I think I was kind of measuring them by Australian standards, which is not as advanced as we are. but certainly within the community in Auckland, I was just so impressed. I mean, they have whole bicycle lanes which I wanted to do in London but couldn't get done in LGBT colours. They're also embraced, and this is very, very important, the intersectionality of other people, so including the Maori people. So at the beginning of the conference that I was keynote speaker at, they had the haka, which was great, and I found this kind of integrated nature of diversity, not just diversity of the LGBT, but also in race. I found that very, very enlightening, and I thought that was something that was very good. The intersectionality of LGBT people is something that I think is ignored in some ways, particularly in organisations. I think you can be gay and black, and you can be gay, you can be gay and a female, and you can also be disabled at the same time. And I think recognizing that as also an important part of the makeup, so it's not just focusing on LGBT aspects, but also focusing on diversity within other areas. I think that helps to gain traction within different organisations, and Auckland's a great place to go. I can't speak for the whole of New Zealand, but it's a very opening, welcoming city. And I was at the conference for a couple of days, talking to a mainly female audience of women in STEM. And again, I think a lot of people don't think that there are women in STEM, like construction. They think of it as a male-dominated industry, and I think the downside of that was that the representation on the male front was probably only about 10%. So we had 90% females at this organisation, and I think that's something that needs to change overall. I think you need to have, you need to make sure, we talk about policies, we try and make this as open as possible, and to make all our events open to everyone. I can just say that after the event, I spoke at GHD, who are an engineering company there, and I had a nice little audience there, very much more comforting, because it's just done in their offices, and they were supported by their CEO came down, which was great. He gave me a rainbow lanyard, and I couldn't wait to get my rainbow lanyard when I was there. And I gave another talk, which is more kind of in depth. And afterwards, a Maori guy who worked there came up to me and said, really thank you for coming down and talking about this. And he's an architect. He's done all these great buildings for the New Zealand government, which is great. And I hung out with him for a couple of days afterwards as well. And he was on his coming out journey. And I thought that was so interesting. So, he was formerly married to a kid, and I think he just wanted somebody to go around with him so he could start that journey. And he did. He's now out at work. He's now out in the organisation that he runs, right? He shouldn't have to hide his own organisation, right? And I think it's just seeing that level of support. It's not considered as anything too out of the norm in New Zealand as well. I think they are as advanced as we are in terms of LGBT inclusion. I say maybe in some cases even more advanced, because we're rolling back rights here, aren't we? So particularly on the trans clock, which is scary and frightening. And I even saw an article the other day on LinkedIn saying, where are the gay men in supporting trans people? And I was a little bit shocked, because I think, I'm there supporting people as much as I can do, but it's an interesting thing. So even within our own community, sometimes we're fighting, and I think that's also not helpful. And if I had one takeaway point from going to New Zealand and having this experience, is that we just need to recognise that we're all really in the same boat. And it makes no difference, really. I mean, me being a gay man at work and being also, I've been authentic for over 20 years, but I was actually authentic in the years where I could have been sacked for being gay. I mean, this is in the 1990s, right? And it's very, very different now to the way it was. But this erosion that we're seeing in terms of it's starting with trans people, right? It's starting with intersex people. It's starting with non-binary people, because they think that's crazy, right? Non-binary is mad. And then where would it go after that? Where would it go after that? Will it start hitting the LGBT community, the LGBT community? I think yes. That's where it will go next. So it's just kicking, because at the moment government policy, the way the country's at the moment, it's just kicking the tires to see where the weak links are. And I think as an ally of all diversity groups, particularly because I've got a black partner as well, so he feels that black and gay is awkward as well. You just have to keep supporting people, and we just need to do that. Sorry, I've run over time a little bit.
No, thanks, Martin. I think it's really good to learn from other countries about what they're doing, and good to hear from like New Zealand. I do a bit of work with Australia, so that brings its own challenges. But the whole point of this is, collaborating. We can learn from each other. And I hear you on the backward steps we seem to be taking, and it's not just LGBT people with disabilities, refugees, all under attack at the moment, and we just have to stay strong and supportive of each other. So thinking about that, Valletta, what are Fortel's next steps going to be for improving LGBT plus inclusion?
In terms of our next step, it's speaking about it is some of what Samantha and Martin has just covered as well, which gives me a bit of should I say, feeling that I'm on the right track in our plans, basically. So there's a few things that I'll be working on, and one of them will be also to review all our policies and procedures and make sure that they're all up to standard in terms of inclusivity. It's also about reviewing our recruitment practices as well as our processes in our recruitment, and make sure that is inclusive to all. I will also ensure that we continue to work with our partners like yourself and other organizations and experts who can ensure the effectiveness of the LGBTQ training that we do. On our intranet, we have just launched on our in-house intranet the LGBTQ toolbox. So there are videos that workers can go on and employees and see and watch to kind of get a better understanding around their LGBTQ plus colleagues and how they can treat them and how they can behave in the workplace, and also around the banter side of it, because I know you guys have touched on a bit of it, but most of it come in that banter bit where they think it's acceptable and certain terminology that they use, which they think, oh, that's all right, I can just say that. So it's kind of giving them that education piece around what is acceptable these days and what is not. Also, continue to train our line managers and our managers as well, because in terms of inclusivity, it comes from the top. And the senior managers and leaders, if it doesn't come from them, then how can we expect our employees and workers to follow suit? So it's making sure that these guys understand and the importance of inclusivity as well. Also, we've recently launched our diversity panel as well. And out of that, we've also got diversity champions. So it's continue to support those guys to ensure that they've got the right support they need to kind of support our workers and colleagues as well. And in terms of from the whole social value piece as well, we take part in different school activities. So whilst we might be training in the workplace, is promoting the construction industry out in the community as well, whether it's to college, university, or even school. So they understand that the construction industry is evolving. And as you say, it's still rough around the edges, but it is evolving and it's trying to attract more people into the construction industry. So the more we can show that we are doing what we say we are going to do, not just talking, but actually putting it into action, that will then give people more chance and more thinking that, oh, I can definitely go and work in the construction industry because I'll be safe and I can be my actual self. So from our perspective is how we can make sure that we educate everyone on being inclusive.
That's brilliant, and I like that. Less talk, more action. I think
Yes.
that's a message to go out to a lot of people around diversity and inclusion. We're going to wrap up now, but before we do, I just want everybody to give one action that they'd like everyone to do after leaving the webinar. Samantha, do you want to start?
Be kind and don't misgender.
Okay, Martin.
I think people should step up and try to make the company as inclusive as possible. Help out. You don't have to be LGBT to do it. Just to be an ally.
Sue, what's your comment?
Call it out. And don't let your family roughshod you.
Yeah, brilliant. Valletta?
I would say I will continue to engage with our leadership and management team, utilizing that support to drive that training and support piece for our workers and employees within the business.
And Ellis?
Just to add on from Samantha and Martin about just to be kind and be an ally, and you will make mistakes, but just keep trying.
So I just want to say thank you to you all. Thanks, Samantha, Martin, Ellis, Sue, and Valletta. It's been a really good discussion. Hopefully people have learnt a lot from it. I think the contact details for Fortel, or maybe all of us, will be out there for if people want to follow up the conversation afterwards. And there will be another Lunch and Learn coming up in the future, so keep an eye out for that on Fortel's social media challenges. And yeah, enjoy IDAHOBIT Day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.